Today I'd like to speak about one of the most important, yet I think undervalued gifts in life. And that gift is silence. The gift of silence. I remember when I went off to Rome to begin my studies for the priesthood when I was just 18, and I remember arriving in Rome, and immediately I just loved everything about seminary life. I loved the routine of it. I loved everything about it. The pasta helped as well, I think, and the pizza. But I remember the first Advent came along, and some of the other students, the other seminarians, they said, so we go away now for a retreat. And I said, well, that's great, I'm looking forward to this. So it was a week away in the hills outside Rome. And one of the guys said, now, I'm sure you know it's a silent retreat. And I said, all right, okay. I said, and when are the periods of silence? And he said, 24/7. Silence all the time. We eat our meals in silence. Everything totally in silence. And you may know already, I quite like to talk. Right? You're not supposed to laugh at that. So this was quite a big thing for me, actually, and I thought, how am I going to get through a whole week totally in silence? And I came to learn that we would have one of these in Advent for a week, another one in Lent for a week, and then 8 times in the year we would do the same during weekends, these recollections. And it's extraordinary because looking back, these were some of the most spiritually enriching moments of my life. It's hard to be silent for a long time, and yet it's through the silence that you actually achieve tremendous self-discovery. The inner depths of yourself seem to come to the surface. Now, I'm not standing here today suggesting that we go into week-long periods of silence. But what I would suggest is that in a world consumed by noise and activity and doing all the time, it is important for us, all of us, to find some time and space to be still and quiet and reflective. If we're serious about our spiritual health and growth, silence has to be a component of our life. It's only really in silence that we can listen deeply and change and grow. And we can take today's first reading as a kind of exemplar of what we should be doing. Look at young Samuel in that first reading, the passage in the first reading. He has already made time and space to be still and silent. We're told that he goes to the sanctuary of God and he's in silence. And in that moment, he hears somebody speaking to him. And at first, he's unsure of who it is. He wonders, is it Eli? Is it somebody else? Is it a human voice? And then after the third call, he realizes in that moment that it's the voice of God that he hears. It's God who's speaking his wisdom, his guidance, his instructions, his directions to young Samuel. Samuel had developed this disciple's ear. He was still enough to listen for the voice of God in his life. And we're told in the passage, he then grew up with the Lord, and he never let a single word of God's fall to the ground to be wasted. And of course, it's the very same with us. We are called, like Samuel, to listen attentively for the voice of God in our world. But it's impossible to do that unless we try to drown out the volume of the world. And it's everywhere. Just think for a moment of the places that we go to in life. If you go into a supermarket, or go onto a train, or go into a gym, listen out, you'll hear there's noise in the background. There's music playing. They're trying to sell something. Have you ever been on a Ryanair flight and you're trying to sleep and you hear those trumpets They're trying to sell you something, right? Noise, noise, noise. That's the world that we live in. And it's as though in the modern world, silence is the enemy. Be anything but silent and still. Because, of course, if we're silent and still, we're thinking, we're reflecting deeply about ourselves, about the direction of our lives, about our relationship with God. So my suggestion is that we turn the volume down and search for God's voice. And we do that in a few different ways. Certainly in our prayer. When we give the Lord some of our time, when we still our hearts and our minds and allow God to speak to us. We also, of course, encounter his real and living voice in the Scriptures. Whenever we read the Scriptures, it's the voice of God who speaks into our innermost ear, our heart. And then giving some time to be still and reflective. And perhaps that means giving a short time every day to contemplation, maybe at the end of our day. And you know, sometimes when I speak to people, they'll say to me, you know, Father, I'm going to set off in a new direction now. I'm going to give an hour a day to silent adoration. And I say, that's a wonderful, noble ambition. Maybe start with 5 minutes. And then develop and work on that. And make silence the pattern of your life. We have to start small if we're going to achieve anything. So today, let's ask for the grace to be good listeners, to develop an attentive ear, and so come to realize the mission that God has in mind for each one of us. May we be attentive to God's voice, which is all around us, if we are quiet enough to hear it. Let's repeat the words of the young Samuel who said, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." Amen.